Good evening. Welcome. Special welcome to everybody who is here for the Bates Dance Festival Professional Program, which kicks off this weekend through August 10th. I'm Debra Cash. I'm delighted to be back here at Bates as the 5th year that I've been the Scholar in Residence. And for these evening performances on Saturday nights at 7 o'clock, there will be these talks which give you a little background, a little context on the work that we're about to see. You can also check out my program notes when you go into the theater. This is the second performance here at the Bates Dance Festival of Camille A. Brown and Dancers. The company made its main debut here in 2011, showing work created partly during a creative residency here. So I'm wondering how many of you have seen her work either here in New York or somewhere on tour? Okay, so we've got some fans here. This is great. The work continues to grow in scale and ambition. Even if you have seen her repertory work, possibly the work that she did with Alvin Ailey, American Dance Theater, you will see that this work really expands her reach and really the difficulty of the themes that she's taking on. Now I'm going to ask you to raise hands for something that I will say right out the front is not something we usually talk about in polite company, okay? How many people in this room know the phrase, the old shuck and jive? Show of hands. Okay, so some, not quite as many as might have been the case 20, 30 years ago. Shuck and jive isn't a phrase that we use. It's seen as derogatory, it's an insult, but it's something that understanding will help you understand the piece tonight, Mr. Tolerance. It's slang that comes from the days of American slavery, the middle of the 19th century. And it probably comes originally from a very benign source, from corn shucking, the season where you would gather in the harvest and take off the green part of it. But eventually it became a derogatory term that referred to African Americans who were evasive, lying, cowardly, in some ways a clowning person. And it was a behavior that was put on in front of white authority figures. The behavior has been described as a tactic of both survival and resistance.
About how these behaviors
to do it in order to limit your own authority in the face of potential power and violence.
She's a choreographer who digs deeply into research to develop her work. Mr. Tolerance is developed out of 3 distinct threads. The first is what she's been able to learn about the Southern plantation traditions and through the work of a scholar named Mel Watkins, who wrote a book called On the Real Side, From Slavery to Chris Rock, a book that, if you're interested in this area, is kind of the gold standard for this research. Mel Watkins tells the story of Stephen Fetchit, the first black actor in a non-musical role who turned his stage routines into a lucrative movie career. And his own work became part of the stereotype of the shiftless black slave. It's interesting that as a dance critic, I was always interested in Stephen Fetchit, and it was extremely hard to find videos of these films. When they are presented now in scholarly settings, there are all these bells and whistles around them that say, we are looking at this as a historical artifact. You know, it will be difficult to watch, and it is difficult to watch, but Stephen Fetchit's performance is extraordinary. That you look at it and you say, how did I not know about this wonderful performer, this great entertainer? Watkins writes, Fetchit diligently masked the ambition, demanding nature, and behind-the-scenes aggression that fired his climb to stardom. Consenting to the studio's strategy of convincing mainstream audiences that he really was a malingering darky, a phrase that was then used, now we don't, he selectively nurtured the stereotype in personal appearances and insisted that reporters amend his remarks so that they reflected the meandering, broken speech that had become his screen signature. Just hearing about that is appalling. Well, did Stephen Fetchit do more harm than good? Scholars and contemporary black artists like Camille Brown and her company don't have easy answers. Spike Lee played out some of these tensions in his challenging and sometimes shocking film Bamboozled in 2000, which more of you may have seen. Bamboozled follows an ambitious TV executive played by Damon Wayans, as he develops a blackface minstrel show with the African-American performers actually darkening their skin, blacking up with burnt cork and grease. And he thinks that this show will expose the racist attitudes of the media. However, just like Springtime for Hitler in Mel Brooks's The Producers, the show he expects to be a scandal becomes a hit. Spike Lee walks the very thin line between the troubling nature of playing up outrageous black stereotypes and profiting from them. In Bamboozled, the great tap dancer Savion Glover, who's discovered in the film as an impoverished street tap dancer, goes along with the show for a while, saying he only cares about keeping the dancing real. It turns out that there's a very small step between tap and the shucking and jiving that is impossible to retain with any sort of dignity. The third thread that Camille likes to think about is the cautionary tale of comedian David Chappelle. He walked away from a reported $50 million contract because he was afraid that his comedy was becoming a shuck and jive, a denigration of black culture, instead of comedy that he was in charge of. As Camille Brown explains, I wanted to honor that and celebrate that courageousness, that dignity, because it takes a lot. He, Dave Chappelle, was attacked, and to walk away, his spirit must have been going through something crazy for him to do that. I think once that happens, it's not about you anymore. It's about the legacy, your ancestors, all those things. All that stuff started coming up for him, and he had to make a decision. Well, happily for Dave Chappelle's fans, he returned to Radio City in New York. He's got a fan here. Earlier this summer for a 2-hour concert. So, he's back treading the boards. Well, what can we tolerate in today's cultural environment, and what should we tolerate? How can African American artists take the pain of minstrelsy's history, learn from it, and turn it into something valuable? Can it be made valuable? And is it harder for black women to take on that question? Camille Brown is asking a lot of difficult questions. She recently told people that when she was 22 and just beginning as a choreographer, she considered taking a male alias, her grandfather's name. She believed that wearing that mask might bring her further acceptance. That was a mask against sexism aimed at black female choreographers. Ultimately, she realized, of course, that unlike writers or painters or composers, people who can exist at a remove from the work that they produce, choreographers are ultimately always present. She wasn't going to be able to disguise herself endlessly in that way. She has chosen, after all, not to wear that mask, but is working at the most personal level to bring the experience of black women in the arts to the fore. This summer, for instance, she has 2 young women accompanying her company here at Bates and other places where their company is touring to see what the arts look like behind the scenes, to demystify it, to create a sense of opportunity. They're blogging about it. They're enriching their conversations with people that they meet. And I think of it very much as unmasking the mask of what this industry is about, the roles that all of us who love the arts play in the construction of the field for this new era. Camille Brown is committed to create a very personal dance language that acknowledges how masks have functioned and can play with them and can discard them at her will, but understanding that a mask should no longer be necessary. And I think that Mr. Tolerance has been successful in generating many conversations, including the one that we'll have this evening after the performance, where a Q&A is not simply an opportunity to ask the choreographer what her background is, but to really struggle with these important themes. And happily, just in the last week, it was announced that Mr. Tolerance had been nominated for a Bessie Award, the New York Performance Award, as Best Production. So I think that there really has been a longing to have these kinds of things made available through an artistic voice like Camille Brown's. So listen, sit with your discomfort, laugh, grimace, it's all there, and we hope you enjoy it.